Imagine this: a young black girl, full of excitement, clutching her first-class boarding pass as she approaches the gate. She's traveling with her father, a man of quiet confidence and undeniable success. But then something unexpected happens, a moment so shocking it freezes the room. A pilot steps forward, his eyes scanning her with doubt, his words dripping with dismissal. "This can't be your ticket," he says, refusing to let her board. Confusion washes over her face, but before she can respond, her father calmly intervenes. What happens next will leave everyone in the airport stunned, and the pilot questioning his own prejudice. This is a story about courage, respect, and the surprising power of standing up for what's right. Stay tuned as we unravel this intense encounter that reveals the importance of dignity and the strength of family. You won't want to miss this. The airport buzzed with the usual chaos, passengers rushing to their gates, announcements echoing overhead. But now, all eyes were on this father and daughter. The girl clutched her ticket tighter, her excitement replaced by confusion. The pilot, standing tall in his uniform, gave her a dismissive look and glanced at the father as if to say, "Prove it." The father didn't raise his voice. He simply asked, "Why do you assume this isn't her ticket?" His tone was calm, but there was an edge to it that made the people nearby stop and listen. The pilot hesitated, stumbling over his words, offering excuses that didn't add up. Passengers whispered among themselves. Who were they? Why was this happening? The tension grew as the father reached into his pocket, pulling out something that made the pilot's expression shift. Was it enough to change the course of this encounter? The father's calm demeanor seemed to unsettle the pilot, but he held his ground, claiming he was simply following protocol. The man raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. He glanced at his daughter, who looked up at him with wide, questioning eyes. She didn't understand why this was happening, and her confusion only deepened the tension in the air. Nearby passengers started recording the scene on their phones. Some whispered in support of the father, while others seemed to side with the pilot, nodding along with his flimsy justifications. "It's not about race," the pilot insisted, though his shifting gaze suggested otherwise. The father finally spoke again, his voice steady but firm. "Let's get something straight," he said, pulling out an elegant leather wallet. As he opened it, a gleam of recognition flashed across the faces of a few onlookers. Was this man someone important? The mood in the terminal shifted as everyone leaned in, waiting to see what would happen next. The pilot's confidence faltered as the father calmly held out a business card from his wallet. The golden embossing glinted under the harsh airport lights, and a murmur rippled through the growing crowd. "Do you know who you're speaking to?" Someone whispered, their voice barely audible over the hum of anticipation. The pilot hesitated, his eyes darting between the card and the man standing in front of him. "This isn't about who I am," the father said, his voice measured. "It's about how you've treated my daughter, how you've judged her before even giving her a chance." His words hit like a quiet thunder, resonating with everyone watching. The little girl looked up at her father, a spark of hope flickering in her eyes. By now, airport staff had gathered, exchanging uneasy glances. The tension was palpable as the father's gaze remained fixed on the pilot, unyielding. "Fix this," he said firmly, leaving the room holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Just as the pilot opened his mouth to respond, a senior airline official stepped into the scene, alerted by the growing commotion. Dressed in a crisp uniform with an air of authority, she scanned the tense faces, her expression unreadable. "What's going on here?" she asked, her tone sharp enough to cut through the thick silence. The pilot, visibly uneasy now, stammered out his version of the events, carefully choosing his words. The father listened quietly, but his composure didn't waver. Instead, he handed the official the same card he'd shown the pilot. Her eyes widened slightly as she read it, recognition dawning. She glanced at the little girl, then back at the pilot. "Did you verify their tickets?" she asked pointedly. Before he could answer, another passenger stepped forward, a woman who had been quietly observing. "I saw everything," she said, her voice steady. This wasn't about the tickets, it was about her. All eyes turned back to the pilot, the weight of the moment crashing down as the father prepared to speak again. The senior official's face grew stern as she turned to the pilot. "You had no reason to doubt them," she said firmly. "The ticket is valid, and this treatment is unacceptable." The pilot looked down, his confidence crumbling under the weight of the evidence and the growing disapproval of the crowd. But before anyone could say more, the father stepped forward, his voice calm yet commanding. "This isn't just about my daughter," he began, his words carrying across the terminal. "It's about how people like her are seen, how quick some are to judge without reason." His gaze swept over the onlookers, and many nodded silently, understanding the deeper truth in his words. Just then, the little girl tugged on her father's sleeve. "Can we go now, Daddy?" she asked softly, her eyes filled with hope. The father smiled down at her, but before they moved, the senior official cleared her throat. "Sir, I assure you, we will address this internally," she said, but the father shook his head. "I'm not here for apologies," he replied. "I'm here to show her that standing up for herself matters." As they walked toward the plane, a ripple of applause broke out. The unexpected twist. The billionaire father later donated a significant sum to improve diversity training across the airline industry, ensuring no one else would face what his daughter had endured that day. As the father and daughter settled into their first-class seats, the little girl's face lit up with excitement once again. The father leaned over and whispered, "Never let anyone make you feel small, no matter what." She nodded, her confidence restored by his unwavering support. Meanwhile, the scene at the gate left a lasting impact. The senior official began an immediate review of the incident, ensuring changes would follow. Passengers who had witnessed everything walked away with a deeper understanding of how important it is to challenge bias when they see it. For the father, it wasn't about proving his wealth or power. It was about teaching his daughter to hold her head high. As the plane soared into the sky, he smiled, knowing they had turned a painful moment into a lesson in resilience and dignity. Sometimes, standing up for what's right is the most powerful way to change the world.